The number the auctioneer read out was so large that the woman 2 rows in front of Nora Bennett actually laughed. A short, disbelieving bark, before she remembered where she was. The auctioneer read it a second time, slower, in case he had misspoken. He had not misspoken. In the 3rd row behind a wall of men in dinner jackets, a hand went down. In the 15th row, in a borrowed dress 2 sizes too tight. Nora Bennett understood that the number had been for her, and that the hand had belonged to a man whose name, until that evening, she had only ever seen printed above the word allegedly. Sold, the auctioneer said, into a silence so complete it had weight. To Mr. Vitale. For the young lady in the, he faltered, looking down at his card. For Miss Bennett, of Queens. Camilla Ashford, standing at the edge of the stage in ivory silk, stopped smiling. Hard cut. Nora Bennett had not, that morning, planned to be auctioned. She had planned to serve canapes. Her cousin Grace Molina was catering at the Waldorf and had, at 4 o'clock on the afternoon of the St. Trade, Cecilia Foundation's winter benefit, called Nora in a whisper from a supply closet to say that 2 of the auction girls, the young women who were supposed to be paraded across the stage in evening wear for the annual charity bachelor auction, had not shown, and that Camilla Ashford, who ran the benefit, was, and Grace quoted, losing her entire mind. Grace. I'm not Nora. $200 cash, on top of the shift. All you have to do is walk across a stage and smile. I'm a size 22. So they don't put women my size on that stage, Grace, and you know it. Camilla is desperate, she said, and I quote, anyone breathing, get in the car. I've got a dress. The dress, when Nora reached the Waldorf staff entrance at 6:40, turned out to be a champagne satin sheath in a size 18 that Grace had, optimistically, described over the phone as forgiving. It was not forgiving. Grace, faced with the reality of Nora in it, made a small pained sound, and then with the resourcefulness of a woman who had worked 12 years in catering, produced from the alterations closet a length of dark grey silk shawl, wrapped it twice around Nora's waist, pinned it in 3 places and stepped back. You look expensive, Grace said. I look like a napkin someone tried to save. You look expensive, trust me. The women out there paid a stylist $800 to look half this good, and none of them managed it. Go. Camilla wants you at 9 sharp. Don't talk to her. Don't apologize for anything. Walk out, count to 15 at the top of the stairs, walk across, count to 5 at the microphone, walk off. $200 in your hand at the end of the night. Nora needed the $200. Nora needed, more precisely, the $1,900 her mother's next round of dialysis copays was going to cost by Tuesday, and the $200 was a start. She had $411 in her checking account. She had a sick mother in a rent-stabilized apartment in Rego Park. She had a framed obituary of a father the Post had once, in 2011, called the disgraced president of Bennett Marine Freight, and she had above the obituary on the same wall a photograph of the man that obituary had described, Thomas Bennett in a hard hat on a dock in Red Hook, laughing at something the photographer had said that bore no resemblance whatsoever to the word disgraced. Thomas Bennett had not been disgraced. Thomas Bennett had been disappeared professionally by a man named Cesare Bruno, who had, in the 18 months before Thomas Bennett's heart gave out, bought his creditors, planted a forged manifest, and taken Bennett Marine Freight for 11 cents on the dollar. Cesare Bruno was, that night, in the ballroom. Nora did not know this yet. She would find out at 9:14. The Cecilia Foundation's winter benefit was held in the grand ballroom of the Waldorf and existed, on paper, to raise money for a hospital in the Bronx that Camilla Ashford's grandmother had once, in 1957, cut a ribbon in front of. It existed, in practice, to raise Camilla Ashford. The bachelorette auction had been added to the program in 2019 as a fun, cheeky, old New York throwback, Camilla had told the Times. The women auctioned were young, thin, well-connected, and the joke of the room unspoken, never actually collected on by their winners, because the winners were their own father's friends and the money went to the hospital and the girls went home with their reputations enhanced. It was, Camilla said, harmless. At 8:50, Camilla Ashford came into the holding room off the ballroom to inspect her stock. She was in ivory silk, hair back, a diamond at her throat the size of a molar. She walked the line of 11 girls. The 9 who had shown up plus Nora and a stranger Grace had grabbed from the coat check, and she stopped in front of Nora and she went very still. "Oh," Camilla said. "Oh no. Miss Ashford. Who put you in this?" "Grace Molina. Grace Molina. Grace Molina is going to be looking for work tomorrow." Camilla's eyes traveled up and down Nora's body, slow and clinical. "Sweetheart, this is not, you cannot go out there and turn around. Turn around. Oh my God. I can go home, Miss Ashford. You can't go home, Miss Ashford. You can't go home. I have 11 slots on the program, and I have 11 girls or the auction runs short, and I lose the room in the third act. You are going out there. But we are going to—" Camilla's fingers snapped twice at an assistant. "Portia. Get me the sash. The one from the underwriter photos. We'll drape her. And nobody bids on her, do you understand? Nobody bids. We do the girls in the order I say. She goes 11th. By 11, the room is drunk and half of them are gone. She goes on. She walks. We let it die. The auctioneer says no takers. All in good fun, moving on. And we cut to the dessert course. Nora. Look at me." Nora looked at her. "Do not," Camilla said slowly, as though speaking to a child, "let anyone bid on you. If someone bids as a joke, you shake your head, no. Do you understand? I am not having this room's last memory of my auction be that. Not if you understand." Nora did not nod. Nora said, "I understand you, Miss Ashford." "Good girl." Camilla patted her cheek. Patted it, actually patted it, and swept out of the room in a cloud of tuberose. Grace, in the corner, mouthed "I'm sorry" with both hands over her mouth. Nora shook her head, once, at Grace. It was not Grace's fault. It was almost never Grace's fault. Grace had spent her whole life apologizing for rooms she did not own. The auction began at 9. The first girl went for 8,000, the second for 11. The third, a very pretty blonde named Sabrina Wilder Kent, whose father owned a bank, went for 32,000 to a laughing table of Wilder Kent's father's college friends. And the room applauded the number the way rooms applaud the amount of money they are in on the joke of. By the 8th girl the room was, as Camilla had predicted, drunk. By the 10th, the bidding had slowed. The auctioneer, a jovial silver-haired man from Christie's who did this every year as a favor, was visibly ready to be done. At 9:14 he read Nora's card. "Our final young lady of the evening," he said, into the microphone. "Miss Bennett, of Queens. Miss Bennett is—" He looked at the card. The card had, Nora understood later, been left blank on Camilla's specific instruction. A lovely young woman with a warm heart, an interest in. He was floundering now, gently. "The arts. Shall we open the bidding at $1,000 for our final lady of the night and for the foundation? 1,000. Do I hear one?" The room did not hear one. The room, in fact, laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It was worse. It was the amused, indulgent laugh of a room full of people who had decided together that the joke was a woman on a stage no one was going to bid on, and that the joke was charming, and that they were by not bidding being kind. Nora stood at the microphone and counted to 5, as Grace had told her. She was counting to 2 when a hand, in the third row, went up. The auctioneer, relieved, said, 1,000. Thank you, sir. Do I hear 2? The hand did not go down. Sir, 1,000 is, you're bidding 1,000, yes? Do I hear? 100,000, said the man in the third row. The room stopped laughing. The auctioneer, whose face had done a complicated thing, cleared his throat. $100,000. From Mr. Vitale. From Mr. Vitale. From Mr. Vitale. To the gentleman in the third row. Do I hear 110? 110,000. Anyone? Nobody heard 110. Nobody, in fact, was breathing. Nora, from the stage, looked down into the third row and could not, at first, see the man, because the men in front of him had all turned to look at him and were, therefore, blocking her view. Then one of them shifted, and Nora saw him. He was, she thought first, younger than she had expected. Late 30s. Dark hair. Cut close. A black dinner jacket cut like a warning. He was not looking at the auctioneer. He was looking at her. His face was perfectly still. His hand, the one that had gone up, was now folded with the other one on the table in front of him. Behind him, at a table against the far wall, an old man in a grey suit, bald, mottled, with the kind of face that had spent a lifetime being obeyed, set down his fork very slowly. That was, Nora would learn in about 90 minutes, Cesare Bruno. 100,000 going once, the auctioneer said, into the silence. Camilla Ashford, from the edge of the stage, took a step forward. She was smiling. It was a very thin smile. "Damiano," Camilla called out sweetly across the room. "Darling, that's very generous. But I think the gentleman may be confused." "I am not confused, Miss Ashford." His voice was low and unhurried, and it reached the back of the room without appearing to try. 200,000, said the old man in the grey suit at the back. The room turned, as one animal, to look at him. Cesare Bruno smiled at Damiano Vitale across 400 people. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who had recognized in a single instant that a private conversation was being conducted in a public room and who had decided to conduct his end of it in front of everyone. Damiano Vitale did not turn around. He kept his eyes on Nora. 500,000, he said. The woman 2 rows in front of Nora made the small, disbelieving bark of a laugh. 750, said Cesare Bruno. 1 million, said Damiano Vitale. The auctioneer had gone the color of paper. He looked at the card in his hand. He looked at Camilla. He looked at Nora. He said into the microphone, in the voice of a man who had never in his career said the following sentence: $1 million from Mr. Vitale for the St. Cecilia Foundation. Do I hear? Cesare Bruno's hand went halfway up. Damiano Vitale said very quietly, without raising his voice, without turning his head, Cesare. Cesare Bruno's hand went down. Sold, the auctioneer said, into a silence so complete it had weight. To Mr. Vitale, for the young lady in them for Miss Bennett, of Queens. Camilla Ashford stopped smiling. Nora Bennett did not remember walking off the stage. She remembered the sound of applause starting late and uncertainly the way a room applauds a thing it does not entirely understand. And she remembered Grace Molina waiting in the wings with both hands over her mouth again. And she remembered Camilla in her ivory silk catching her by the elbow at the foot of the stairs and hissing so close that Nora could smell the champagne on her breath. Do you have any idea what you just did? I didn't do anything, Camilla. That is Damiano Vitale. I know his name. He does not come to this benefit. He has never come to this benefit. He has never come to this benefit. He was not on the list. Somebody let him in. Somebody let him in. And he sat there and he watched every single girl go by. And he did not lift a finger until Camilla's mouth worked. Nora, listen to me. You are going to go with him tonight. Do you understand? He is going to collect. That is what $1 million means. You are going to go with him. And you are going to be pleasant, and in the morning you will come back. And you and I are going to have a very serious conversation about what is going to happen next. Do you understand me? Camilla, do you understand me? Get your hand off my arm, Camilla. Camilla got her hand off her arm. The man from the 3rd row was standing at the bottom of the stairs. He had, Nora saw, up close, one of those faces that did not, at first, look like anything in particular, and then, as you watched it, began to look like the only face in the room. Grey eyes. Not gunmetal. Some quieter grey. He was holding folded over one arm a coat, long dark woman's cut, and Nora understood with a small internal jolt that it was in her size, and that this meant something she did not yet have the equipment to interpret. He inclined his head to her. Not a bow. The suggestion of one. Miss Bennett, Mr. Vitale, I would like to apologize. Nora blinked. For the price. It was higher than it needed to be. I had not intended to bid until the room began to laugh, and then I could not, in good conscience, sit still. And then Mr. Bart. Bruno entered the conversation, which I had not anticipated, and the number ran away from me. I did not mean to make a spectacle of you. I made one anyway. I am sorry. Nora looked at him. You bought me for $1 million, Mr. Vitale. I bought your card, Miss Bennett, for the foundation. Nothing else was purchased. Camilla just told me Miss Ashford is mistaken about a great many things. That is one of them. He held out the coat. May I? It is cold in the corridor, and the ballroom is about to become an unpleasant place to be, because in approximately 4 minutes, Mr. Bruno's people are going to make it one. I would prefer we were not here when they do. Will you walk with me? She looked at the coat. She looked at his face. She said, yes. He held the coat. She put her arms into it. He did not touch her shoulders, did not in fact come near her body at all. He simply held the wool up and stepped back the instant it was on her, the way a man might hold a door open. He did not offer her his arm. He walked at her left half a pace back in the manner of a person escorting rather than possessing a Nora who'd been touched too casually by too many men in her 28 years. Notice the discipline of it, and she would not have used the word at the time, and only in retrospect could she name it. Moved. They did not go out through the main doors. He took her, instead, through a service corridor behind the stage, past a startled busboy, down a flight of back stairs to a loading dock on 49th Street, where a black car was already waiting with its engine running. A lean, watchful man in his 40s opened the rear door. Damiano Vitale gestured for Nora to get in first. She stopped at the door. Mr. Vitale. Yes. My cousin Grace is still inside. Miss Molina will be brought a car at 11:30. She will be paid her shift and a bonus large enough that she can afford to be fired by Miss Ashford in the morning, without it inconveniencing her, which she will be. She will be told, when she's brought her car, that you are safe and that you are with me. She will not be told where we have gone, because she does not need to carry that information in a room full of Ashfords. Is that acceptable? Yes. Then please. She got in. The car pulled away from the loading dock and turned south on Park Avenue. The lean, watchful man, Renzo, Damiano would call him a minute later, did not turn around. Damiano sat across from her, not beside her, in a facing seat, and did not, again, touch her. He did not look at her body. He looked at her face and only her face, and when he saw that she was without meaning to, shivering. The ballroom had been warm and the corridor had been cold, and the Park Avenue night was colder still. He reached without a word into a compartment beside him and withdrew a folded cashmere throw and, holding it by its 2 upper corners, laid it across her lap without allowing his hand to make contact with hers. My name, he said, is Damiano Vitale. You know this. I run a family in this city. You know this too, or you would not have gone pale on that stage when the auctioneer said my name. What you do not know is that I have been looking for a way to sit down at a table with you for 8 months, and that I have not done so because there was no clean way to do it that did not look like exactly what it would have been, which is a man using a woman's grief as a lever. Tonight when I saw your name on the program at 4 this afternoon, I understood that a table had been set for us anyway, and that I was going to have to sit down at it whether it was clean or not. I am sorry it was not cleaner. I am going to try for the rest of the night, and for however long you permit me to speak to you, to be as clean as I am capable of being. Do you have questions? Nora had a great many questions. She started with the one that was closest to the surface. You knew my name. I have known your name since April. Why? He considered. He did not look away. Because your father's name, he said, used to be on a warehouse in Red Hook that I now own the block of. Because the man who took that warehouse from him is a man I have been building a case against for 4 years, and because your mother's nephrologist at Mount Sinai owes me a favor he has never been asked to repay. Nora sat very still. I don't want your favor for my mother. You do not have to take it. It is offered, and it will remain offered, and you may choose never to speak of it again, and it will still, quietly, be offered. That is the shape it will keep. I am not, Miss Bennett, in the business of trading favors for the affection of women who did not ask for them. Then what are you in the business of? He looked at her a long moment. Then, for the first time that night, the corner of his mouth moved. A small, tired thing, not quite a smile. Tonight, he said, I am in the business of taking you out of a room that was about to become dangerous and buying you a warm meal and answering every question you are prepared to ask me, and putting you into a car at whatever hour you say and sending you home to Rego Park. That is the entire business of tonight. Tomorrow's business, if you would like there to be any, is a separate conversation, and it is one you will lead, not me." Nora looked at him for a long time. She said, "What was Cesare Bruno doing at that auction?" "Cesare Bruno was at that auction," Damiano said, "because Camilla Ashford invited him. Miss Ashford's father has been in business with Mr. Bruno for approximately 11 years. The money that keeps the St. Cecilia Foundation solvent, that keeps the Ashford house on 74th Street heated, that keeps Miss Ashford in ivory silk, is Bruno money, cleaned through the Ashford family the way rich people have been cleaning ugly money for generations. Mr. Bruno attends the winter benefit every year. He sits at the back table. He gives $180,000, always in a cashier's check, always to a specific line item. And he goes home before dessert. He was not planning to bid tonight. He bid tonight because he saw my hand go up, and he understood correctly that I would not be bidding on a girl from Queens for $100,000 unless the girl was in some way a message to him. He was returning the message. He was, I think, also curious. He did not know your face until tonight. But he knew my name. He has known your name since your father died, Miss Bennett. He simply had until tonight. No reason to think about it." Nora closed her eyes. "He does now," she said. "He does now," she said. "He does now." She opened her eyes. "Then we should not have left him alive in that ballroom." Damiano Vitale went very still. He looked at her across the small space of the car for what felt like a long time. "Miss Bennett," he said quietly, "that is not ordinarily a sentence a woman says to a man she met an hour ago. It's not ordinarily a night I've had. No, it is not. I want to know something. Ask. Was the million real?" "The million was real. Wired at 8 o'clock this evening, on my instruction, from a holding account pending the outcome of the auction. It cleared to the St. Cecilia Foundation's operating account at 9:19. It will build a very nice pediatric wing at a hospital in the Bronx that your grandmother once, I believe, worked at as a nurse. I did some reading." "You did some reading?" "I did a great deal of reading, Miss Bennett." She was quiet. "Take me somewhere warm," she said at last, "and answer my questions, and then take me home." "Yes, Miss Bennett." The place he took her was not a restaurant. It was a townhouse on East 63rd Street, and Nora understood walking up the stone steps that this was his home, and that he was taking her into it not because he could not think of a restaurant, but because he did not, that night, want her in a room where other men could look at her. He led her into a sitting room where a fire had apparently been lit in anticipation of them, and a small round table had been set for two. And a woman in a black apron was at that moment, laying down a plate of something that smelled of garlic and lemon and the sea. The woman said, "Mr. Vitale," and to Nora, "Miss Bennett, please, sit." The chair had been chosen for her body. It was wider than a dining chair had any right to be, and armless, and Nora sat down in it and understood, again without yet having language for it, that someone in that house had, in the 4 hours since her name had gone on the program, thought about this. She looked at Damiano Vitale across the table. "You had a chair made." "I had a chair chosen, Miss Bennett. It was already in the house. It was moved. For me. For you." She did not know what to do with that. She ate. The food was good. He did not, she noticed, watch her eat, which was a discipline men in restaurants rarely extended to women in her body. He ate his own food. He answered her questions. He told her over the course of 2 hours and a bottle of wine, neither of them finished, the whole shape of the thing. Cesare Bruno, Bennett Marine, Freight, the forged manifest, the federal prosecutor, the 11 cents on the dollar. He told her about the 4-year investigation he had been building. Quietly, patiently, through a cousin at the U.S. Attorney's office, through a certain accountant in Newark who had, at last, decided he wanted to sleep at night. Through a former Bruno soldier now living under a different name in Arizona. He told her that the case was at that moment 90% complete, and that the last 10% was the piece he could not get from the outside, the piece that would only come from someone inside the Ashford orbit, because it was through the Ashford family that the money had been laundered, and it was the Ashford paperwork that would seal Cesare Bruno inside a federal cell for the rest of his life. "You want me to help you," Nora said. "I want you to choose," Damiano said. "I want to lay every piece of it in front of you, and I want you to decide what you want your father's name to have meant. If what you want is to walk away tonight and never speak to me again, I will drive you home myself, and the case will proceed the way it was proceeding before you and I met, which is slowly and imperfectly. If what you want is to be in the room when Cesare Bruno finds out his life is over, then I will build you a way to be in that room, and I will build it so that no one, Miss Bennett, ever knows you were the reason. That is what I am offering. It is not a favor. It is a door." Nora put down her fork. "And Camilla," she said. "Camilla," Damiano said, "is a separate door, and it is your door, not mine. I do not generally involve myself in matters between women. I will open any door for you that you would like opened. I will not decide which one." Nora thought about it. She thought about Camilla's fingernails on her arm at the foot of the stairs. She thought about good girl, sweetheart patting her cheek. She thought about a woman in a size 2 ivory dress deciding, at 8:50 on a Saturday evening, that Nora Bennett was not to be permitted a bid. She said, "The Camilla door opens first." "Yes, Miss Bennett." "And the Cesare door opens when it is ready." "Yes, Miss Bennett." "And the $1 million." "The $1 million," Damiano said, "builds the wing at a hospital in the Bronx. And Miss Ashford, tomorrow, tries to spin that as a personal victory. And every person in that ballroom tonight who watched Mr. Biev, Bruno's hand go down when I said his name understands, whether or not they can articulate it, that a very old balance has just shifted in this city. That is the value of the $1 million, Miss Bennett. It is a bell that has been rung. Miss Ashford will hear it. Mr. Bruno already has. And by Friday, every person who was in that room will have begun, without being able to explain to themselves why, to distance themselves from the Ashford name. You just made me the most expensive woman in New York. I made you," Damiano said. "The woman it cost $1 million not to laugh at. The distinction matters, Miss Bennett. Tomorrow morning it will matter to you very much." He was right. It did matter the next morning, when the Post ran a photograph of her at the microphone above the headline, "WHO is the $1 million woman." It mattered when the Daily News, competing, ran a longer piece with the subheadline, "Vitale bids, Bruno in shock park, a venue moment." It mattered when Grace called her at 9 in the morning, hoarse from lack of sleep, to say that Camilla Ashford's mother had called the catering office at 7 and had in an unhinged monologue fired Grace, then unfired her, then fired her again, and that Grace was at that moment drinking coffee out of a mug that said, "Walter's Okast Kozen," and could not stop laughing. It mattered on Monday, when Camilla Ashford's engagement to a Sotheby's board member named Preston Wilder was quietly without press called off, because Preston Wilder's mother in Greenwich had opened her Post on Sunday morning and had called her son and had said in the tone that Wilder mothers use, "Darling, there's a thing." It mattered on Tuesday when the St. El's Cecilia Foundation's board, 3/4 of whom did not want to be associated, going forward, with a name that had lost a public bidding war to Damiano Vitale, invited Camilla to step back from operational leadership for the season. It mattered on Wednesday when a woman named Beatrice Colley, who was the consigliere Salvatore Conti's cousin's wife, and who was in the old money circles of the Upper East Side, a woman other women pretended to like and actually feared, mentioned casually at a luncheon on 74th Street that she had just heard, mind you, I don't know how true it is, that Gerald Ashford's finances were not what they had been, and that poor Marion Ashford did not know how they were going to get through the spring. By Wednesday evening the rumor was at the club. By Thursday morning it was at 3 luncheons. By Friday afternoon Gerald Ashford's bank, which was also a bank on whose board Damiano Vitale's cousin sat, made a phone call to Gerald Ashford's attorneys about a note that was, unfortunately, being called. It mattered in a small, quiet way when Camilla Ashford tried to call Nora Bennett on Thursday. Nora did not answer. It mattered when Camilla Ashford came to Nora Bennett's mother's apartment in Rego Park on Saturday morning, a full week after the auction, in a camel coat and no makeup. holding a small white box tied with a ribbon, and stood on the sidewalk in front of the buzzers, and could not, when the moment came, bring herself to press one. Margaret Bennett watched her from the kitchen window for 11 minutes. Then Margaret Bennett, who was very sick but was not, and had never been, unable to protect her daughter, opened her window and called down, "Miss Ashford, go home. My daughter is not for you." Camilla Ashford went home. The photograph that ran in the Post the next morning, Camilla in her camel coat, being told from a fourth-floor window in Queens to go home by a woman on oxygen, was the photograph that finished the Ashford family in New York. By March, the townhouse on 74th Street was on the market. By June, Cesare Bruno was arraigned in the Southern District on 22 counts, of which count 7 read in the first line, in the matter of the fraudulent conveyance of Bennett Marine Freight LLC in the fall of 2011. The defendant did knowingly and willfully. Nora Bennett read that line at her kitchen table at 7 in the morning, with a cup of coffee going cold in her hand, and she called her mother into the kitchen without turning around. And Margaret Bennett read the line over her shoulder, and neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Margaret said, quietly, "Your father would have wanted his name in that sentence." "It is in that sentence, Mama." "Yes." Margaret's hand, on her shoulder, was very thin and very warm. "Yes, it is." The trial was in the fall. Nora sat in the 3rd row every day. Damiano Vitale did not sit with her, because he was smart and because his sitting with her would have handed the defense a narrative it did not otherwise have. But Enzo Marchetti sat 2 rows behind her every day, quiet and watchful, and Damiano met her in a small Italian place in the East Village every evening after court, and they ate slowly, and they did not most nights talk about the case, because Nora had begun to understand that Damiano Vitale was very good at the thing he was doing and did not need her to help him do it, and also because Damiano Vitale, it turned out, knew a great deal about a great many things she had never had anyone to talk about opera, about the history of the New York docks, about the way his mother had made a specific kind of rice in Palermo when he was small, and how he had never, in the 20 years since her death, found a woman who could make it the same way. On the 3rd night of the trial, he told her over a plate neither of them touched that Renzo Fontana, his own underboss, the man who had stood at his father's grave and vowed to protect his son, had been feeding Cesare Bruno the family's shipping routes for 11 months, in exchange for a promise that when the dust settled, Renzo would be the man left standing. He told her this quietly, without emphasis, the way one tells another person a piece of one's own bad news. He told her that Enzo had known for 6 days before telling him because Enzo had wanted to be sure. He told her that Renzo had, on the day Enzo told him, disappeared before Damiano's car reached the office. "He's alive," Nora said. "He is alive. For the moment, he will be found. You are not going to kill him." Damiano looked at her. "No," he said. "I am not going to kill him." "Why?" "Because you would not want me to, and because the case Enzo has built against him is cleaner than a bullet, and because a man like Renzo in a federal facility for the rest of his life, knowing what he did to be there, is a colder end than anything I could offer him with my hands." "You would have." "Before," Damiano agreed. "I would have." "Before," Damiano agreed. "I would have." She reached across the table. She took his hand. She looked at the knuckles, clean, unbroken, the small silvered scar of some old story, and she turned his hand over and pressed her mouth, once, to the palm. He made a sound she had not heard him make. "Damiano." "Nora, you are allowed." He was, at last, allowed. Cesare Bruno was convicted in November on 19 of the 22 counts. He was sentenced in January to a term that would outlast him. He was, on the morning of the sentencing, permitted a brief statement to the court. He used it to say that he had been the victim of a personal vendetta. He was not wrong about this, technically. He was wrong about who was conducting it. He believed, until the day he died in a federal facility in Pennsylvania, that Damiano Vitale had brought him down. He never once, in 5 years of appeals and interviews and one long conversation with a Times reporter 3 months before his death, mentioned the name Nora Bennett. He did not know it. That, Nora thought, was the cleanest revenge of all, that she had been the reason and he had never been permitted to know it. Renzo Fontana was found in a rented house in Sarasota in the 2nd week of December. He was arrested without incident. He pled out. He is serving his sentence in a facility in Kentucky and, per his cooperation agreement, will be there for the rest of his life. Camilla Ashford married, quietly, in the spring of the following year, a decent man from Wilmington who worked in insurance and had never heard the name Vitale or the name Bruno. Her family, by then, had left New York. She is, by all accounts, a good wife. She is, by all accounts, still occasionally photographed at charity events in Delaware, and she is, in those photographs, always looking slightly to the left of the camera, as though watching for something to walk into the frame. Grace Molina left the Waldorf in February and, with a small loan from a woman she declined to name, opened her own catering company in Long Island City. It did well. It did, in fact, cater the wedding. The wedding was in May, at a small church in Carroll Gardens that had been standing since before either family existed. Nora wore a dress the color of cream and iron. Margaret Bennett, upright and steady, walked her daughter down the aisle on an oxygen line, so light it might have been a ribbon. Enzo Marchetti and a broad, quiet soldier named Vince Ricci stood beside Damiano in matching dark suits. Salvatore Conti, the old consigliere, gave the toast. He was old and his voice shook a little. To the Vitale family, he said, and lifted his glass. And to the woman who cost us $1 million in a room full of witnesses and has been the best money this family ever spent. He looked at Nora. Cross this house and you will learn her reason. Do not cross this house. Nora Bennett, formerly of the 15th row, formerly of the size 18 dress that did not fit, formerly of the stage no one was supposed to bid on, lifted her glass and did not say anything at all. She did not need to. The room understood her. They thought she was a joke on a stage no one would bid on. They thought she was a woman in a borrowed dress, a punchline the auctioneer would let die politely before the dessert course, a name on a card that had been left deliberately blank. They forgot that some women, when you finally look at them, are worth more than the room can count, and that the price of laughing at one in the right city, on the right Saturday night, is every dollar you have and every door you thought was yours to close. If you love a heroine who does not shrink, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who has ever stood on a stage waiting for a bid that did not come. And subscribe for the next one. And in the comments, tell me, what is the number they should have paid and never did for the woman you already are?